Yo, it's the Jolly and Slimm Show. Here, let's go. Time to lock in, turn the volume up. We bring that heat, yeah, we keep it tough. Mindset, hustle, life on the go. You already know it's the Jolly and Slimm Show.
So yeah, I'll kick it off and just kind of start rambling or whatever, and then we'll go from there. How's that? Cool? All right, in 3, 2, 1, no. Oh, that's funny. What's up, guys? I'm Slim, and he's Jolly, and this is the Jolly and Slimm Show, episode 1. This is our first real episode. Yeah? Yeah, first real episode. That's going to be super cool. We're stoked about it. Give you guys a quick rundown of what episode 1's going to look like. We're just going to kind of introduce ourselves. I think that's going to be the easiest way to go. Most of you already know, if you've been around for a little while, you already know my real name is Tim. I grew up in Northwest Florida, and I grew up in the woods, the redneck backcountry, essentially, of Northwest Florida, and on the beach. It was really weird. I grew up in a town that's in an area that's like super touristy now, and it was kind of touristy when I was growing up. So it's kind of a rich area, and then right next to that is like hunting, fishing. There's like two very different dichotomies of people within a 10-mile span of each other. So that's kind of cool. I grew up and it's called Santa Rosa Beach, Florida. Yeah, I went to the school I went to elementary school in the same school. This is kind of interesting, that my mother, my grandmother, and my great-grandmother all went to. So that's pretty crazy. Yeah. Yeah, just played a little bit of sports growing up, baseball mostly. Collected cards, all that fun stuff. We'll definitely get into that kind of stuff at some point. Collected baseball cards. Don't really collect too much baseball cards now. I'm more into football cards as an adult, but definitely collected baseball cards as a kid, and basketball because Michael Jordan. Had to collect those Bulls cards, those Fleer 91 cards. Yeah. Let's see. Tried to go to college a couple times out of high school. 3-time college dropout. I'm sure you don't hear that from a lot of people. I'm a 3-time college dropout. I started out going to college while I was in high school for architecture. I grew up on construction sites, building all the houses for the rich people. My dad hung dry. Well, my dad did a lot of things, but what I remember the most was that he was a drywall hanger and finisher, because that's what I did with him the most. He actually was a general contractor for a while and different stuff like that too, but through my teenage years, he was we hung drywall. So I grew up doing that. I tell people a lot that I have, like, my DNA is on so many houses inside of this area, in our area or whatever. It's just crazy. So I was always into art, creative, doing stuff like that, drawing the pages of my comic books, redrawing them, not redrawing over them, redrawing them on paper and stuff. And so I decided that combining the knowledge that I had from the construction world and the creative drawing side of things kind of just led me to architecture, right? It just kind of made sense. And so I started doing that, and I found out that I realized that school wasn't really for me. I knew that already, but it was like, I graduated in 2000, and it's just what you did. There were no other options. It was graduate from high school, go to college. There was no other option. Especially with the way my family was set up. My mom's dad was like, you can go to college anywhere you want. I'll pay for it. You know what I mean? So it was kind of expected that I went to college, right? So I started going to school for that, and I was working in restaurants and stuff at the time, at night, working with my dad during the day. And so I shifted gears and was like, you know what? I want to go to school for culinary arts. So I dropped out of architecture school, started going to culinary school at a different college because they didn't have the culinary at the college I was going to. So I shifted gears and started going to culinary school. This was in 2002, and in September of 2002, my dad was killed in a car accident, and I just lost control. I lost it. I dropped out of school. My stepmom and my two stepbrothers, who I had grown up with I was 20 and I was 8 when they got together. So I had 12, 13 years, they moved back to Ohio. So I had my mom, but her house was kind of not necessarily a great place to be. So I kind of was thrown into, I was 20 years old, but I was also kind of thrown into adulthood, right? At that age. Cause I was still living at home. I was going to school. I was doing all this stuff. Essentially nothing changed from me going to high school into going into college. I still was at home at my dad's, all that different stuff. So, and that was kind of the plan was, as long as I was in school, I could stay. I could stay at home. And so when he passed and they moved, and I was like, okay, like now what do I do? So I got into all the bad stuff that people get into. Anyway, that's a story for another episode, but yeah, so bounced around through kitchens, and I actually ran a bar for a little while that I was kind of leasing from some people. I called it owning it because I technically did, but legally didn't. Their name was still on all the legal paperwork, but I leased it from them. And that was an interesting time. I lost a bunch of money, as you can in the restaurant and bar industry. Lost a bunch of money real fast. That was about 2010. So I was not even 30 yet. Golly, that's crazy to think about, that I was like not even 30 yet. When I was doing that, I met this family that had moved to our area from St. Louis and started dating their daughter. And Billy, the husband of the family, when they moved down here, he had bought some screen printing equipment. And so I kind of went to work with him on every now and again, like helping him out and stuff. And eventually went to work with him full time, printing t-shirts and stuff. And I still do that to this day. So not with him anymore, but even after we stopped dating, I stayed friends with the family. I still worked for them, all that kind of cool stuff. But anyway, back in 2019, right before the world ended, I started my business that I have now, or some form of my business that I have now. I quit my real job and started Fresh Prints of South Walton. It was called Fresh Prints of South Walton in September of 2019. And then the world ended just a few short months later. And I was like, this sucks. What am I going to do now? Like, I quit my job. Nobody's hiring. I didn't really have any money necessarily to survive on. But businesses weren't open, so they weren't buying shirts. And I had just invested all of my time into this idea that I was going to print shirts for the rest of my life. So I was like, I don't know what's going to happen now. Thankfully, my landlord gave me a couple of breaks on the rent through that period of time, because there was just no way I was going to be able to pay it. I think some landlords were good about that, some were not through that time. But also, thankfully, praise the Lord, I live in the great state of Florida, where we didn't stay shut down for any amount of time at all. As soon as they realized that they didn't need to be closed anymore, they started opening stuff back up, and people went back to work. And as soon as they did, it was like a fire hose. Like, business just started coming in. It was great. Did that from 2019 until June of last year, 2024. I merged with another local company from the town next to mine called Emerald Prints, and we merged together to form Emerald Prints and Graphics. And that's where we're at pretty much today. We're still doing that, and yeah, that's kind of the long and short of who I am, I guess. I'm a
Yeah.
I'm a somewhat rednecky, somewhat richy, not rich by dollars or anything, but like kind of grew up in that world. Guy who prints t-shirts.
Yeah. It's kind of, it's funny hearing your story because like it's kind of like there's a lot that is similar
Yeah,
here in a second when
that's
I
funny.
start talking. So I'm Jolly, that most of you know, but my real name, my government name
The
is
government.
William or Will. But you know, a lot of people call me William growing up, and then as I got older, it turned into Will, and then now in the V Friends world, it's Jolly, which
Yeah.
is I'm okay with that. But so I grew up in a small, I guess you can say, town in South Carolina called Rock Hill. Um, yeah, my family was kind of a working class family. You know, we wasn't rich by any means,
Right.
but we wasn't poor. We didn't really. I didn't. I didn't need for anything. I guess you can say I had all the needs. Man, I wanted a lot, but I didn't need for anything.
Sure.
I guess you can say my dad was a functioning alcoholic, but he was never. I would say he was never bad per se. Apparently, from what I was told, a lot of his bad stuff that was going on was before I was born,
Mm.
and I'm the oldest of me and my brother. But I mean, he was kind of a hard dad in a way, but never. I mean, I got spankings, but I mean, I got spankings like most kids back in the '80s did,
Yeah.
'80s and
That was just
'90s.
part of life.
I mean, I guess in today's world, you'd probably say that it was abusive. Most people would say, "Oh, but it wasn't." I would never say that.
It wasn't.
Um,
It still
if
isn't.
anything, if I would say anything, he was more verbally
Mm.
than anything. He would just say a lot of kind of off the wall stuff. But he was like motivating, and he cared for us. I mean, I know that he loved me because he definitely told me that a lot. It's just sometimes he would just. I think it was probably because of him drinking. Now that I got older, like him just kind of
Sure.
saying something that he didn't really mean at the time, or maybe whatever. But so growing up, but my grandfather was like my idol. That was my mom's, and it's crazy because it's not my mom's real dad; it's her stepdad.
Mm-hmm.
But I always called him my pawpaw. Like that's my pawpaw. And my mom's real dad, I would always call him pawpaw policeman because he was a lieutenant of the SWAT team in Charlotte.
Okay.
But I would never really call him. I would always, if I never really told people pawpaw policeman because they didn't know who I was talking about. I would say that's my mom's real dad, but that's my
Mm.
grandfather. So my grandfather was like my idol, the person that I looked up to, the one that pretty much, besides my mom and stuff, that motivated me a lot to do better in life and have a better understanding and do things. I played sports growing up. Baseball was my worst sport. I didn't start playing baseball until like the last year you can play before like you start having to play middle school.
Mm.
So I didn't know any of the techniques. I was the guy that got to hit one time and played the field, and I think I played like what right field.
Right
They
field,
threw
'cause
out
nobody ever did to you.
just because they had to as a rule. So
Yep.
I knew that right then I wasn't a baseball player, but basketball and football was my sports. I would say when I was younger, I was more of a football dude, but I was also smaller.
Mm.
Um, but then as I got a little older, basketball turned into being my sport. I still love. It's kind of weird because I say I love basketball better, but then when football's around, like I'm a big pro football person
Yeah.
rather than college.
Me too.
Um, I would say like, oh, I pay more attention to pro, but I think it's just more seasonal. But like, if you really break it down, I'm a basketball person. I know more about basketball. So as I grew up, I just, was a normal kid going to school that didn't like school, uh, didn't really try in school, because I just didn't like being there and doing the stuff. And, I passed all my grades, went to middle school, high school I struggled because I didn't really care or try.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course I started skateboarding and I started kind of chasing girls around and getting all that nonsense. And that I stopped trying out for sports because of my grades. Because every year I would try out, I would make the teams.
But then you get kicked off.
I stopped playing football because I started realizing these boys are way bigger than me.
Mm.
When I was doing conditioning in ninth grade, and these guys were pushing up 400 pounds on the bench press, and I'm over there like I don't even know if I was 100 pounds yet, and I couldn't even bench the bar.
Right.
I still can't bench press. Like
I can't
I
either.
cannot bench. I don't know what it is. I can't go from here to here. I feel like I'm a strong kind of dude, but like that just never.
It's
Could
not a
never
very
do it.
natural movement, to be honest. It's
So
not.
like
It's not really
me
relevant
and
for anything.
yeah, me and a friend, we were lifting weights for conditioning and stuff one summer, and he was a great basketball player, and we finally were like, this ain't for us. So I kind of like went basketball at that point, but I still was on the smaller side. I'm 6'1" now, but I didn't hit a growth spurt until like 10th grade.
Right.
So like I was always like small, like my son is. But so I went through high school, and honestly, I wasn't looking for like, oh, college is coming up. I really just kind of was like, I'm gonna graduate, get a job. I mean, maybe thought about maybe joining the army just because I knew I had to do something, but I definitely didn't put a lot of thought in that whatsoever. And then I started dating this chick in high school, and then she started talking. And I think it was my right before senior year, so she started like going to colleges and applying, and I was like, well, hold up. I can't let my girlfriend go to college
Mm.
because all these dudes are going to be hitting on her. Like, so like I started buckling down my senior year because they did tell me if you don't pass everything, you're not walking this year.
Mm.
So I had to like buckle down, and like my road to college was a hard road to college because like of that reason. So I was like, I hurt myself by not doing a lot of stuff leading up to it. I never taught myself how to really study. I never really all the things you should have been learning, I didn't. So like I had to like learn them all real quick, and my back was against the wall. But I luckily, I graduated, and before I graduated, I started applying for colleges. And there's this small school in South Carolina called Lander University. I got accepted to, but I didn't get accepted like straight route. I had to come to a summer program. Like I graduated in like May something, and like 2 weeks later, I'm in college.
Right.
And you had to get this, it was called the Summer Smarts program. You had to go to this summer school, take 2 classes in real college classes, and make C's or higher. And that's what you would start your freshman year as your GPA too. And I was like, okay, so, and if you didn't get C's or higher, you didn't get in.
Mm.
So you had to like prove yourself a little bit. So I went there, and I mean, it was not hard classes. Like it was like psychology was one class, music was one. I forgot. I had speech. I think I took speech and maybe art history or something like that. Which I don't know if you know, or music history or something. Yeah, I think it was music history or I can't remember, but I knew it was speech too. So I got to take that early on. But so I went in there. I made 2 Bs. So I started my freshman year with 3.0, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm the big man on campus because I've never had a 3.0.
Right. Right.
I graduated high school like 2.0.
Me too.
And then so I got in, and me and that girl ended up breaking up very early in our freshman year, like normal. That's what usually happens. And I kind of just did the college thing, um, joined the fraternity, and then started partying, and my grades just went from that 3.0 to I made a 0. I made a 0.0 one semester.
Ooh.
Uh,
You just didn't go to
'cause
class at all?
No, well, actually, see, this is my problem. I went to class and still made a 0.0 just because I didn't do the work.
Didn't do anything?
So, like, I was going to classes, and I really didn't think about joining fraternity for a while, like at all. And then, like, as I met people, because actually, my plan was because I was actually going to go my first year and transfer to the Citadel. Because then from Rock Hill, in my little town, a lot of people went to the Citadel, and a lot of my friends went there. So I was like, I'm just going to go there and be around people. But then I met some friends and like started trying to figure out how to get in this fraternity. And I had to like pull my grades up to get in because you had to have a 2.0 to get in. So I pulled my grades up, got into the fraternity. Then the semester after I actually got initiated, and I just started partying and doing the bad things, and those are all different conversations for later
Sure.
on
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
But I started doing all that stuff, and like I put myself in holes my whole time, and
Mm.
like I could have quit. I actually got kicked out of college twice because of my grades, and I got suspended the first time. Well, I was only supposed to be suspended for one semester, but I played around and I ended up sitting out a whole year when I wasn't supposed to.
Right.
And then the second time I came back, I was supposed to be suspended for a year. So I
Good
ended up
grief.
staying a whole year, almost 2 years out of school. And the only reason why I kept going was because of my grandfather, because he wanted me to have a college education, and I didn't want to let him down, and I kept pushing, pushing, and then I had to pull a lot of schemes because it ended up being I ended up turning into Van Wilder, where I was the oldest dude there. I remember looking around one day and be like, okay, everybody in my fraternity, that my friends are gone,
Right.
so
Right.
like it's time for me to graduate. And I didn't really have a major yet either. I didn't declare a major because I would like do something 1 minute and see what I liked, and if I didn't like it, I'd go somewhere else. So then I got my manual. I was like, all right, what do I need to do to get out of here the quickest? And I had so many classes because I was taking so many things that the history major was my quickest route out. From that point, I had a year and a half and I could get out. I
Mm.
was in school almost like 6.5, 7 years. But now, because of I was in that town for like almost 8, so
Right.
like it was a battle. And then finally, I graduated, and right before I graduated is when my brother passed away
Mm.
tragically. And that's a whole nother thing to get into. But so my brother passed away in 2006, and I graduated in 2006.
Mm.
So like, I graduated December of 2006. Is that right? Yeah. And and then I went into working in a wide format graphics company where we made signs, and I did
Yeah.
all the laminating on stickers, and I mounted all the stuff to different type of materials for big signs and stuff. And I got into that. I was into that, and I was like, "Oh, this is cool." So I worked at that company for a couple of years and got laid off. I ended up getting married. That didn't last long at all because I got married to the girl that I was with for most of my college career. We were together for 6 years. We had a year-long engagement, got married, and we wasn't together, but not on paper it was a year. But
Mm.
really, we got married in May. By August, I was moved out.
Mm.
So, and it was, but it was one of those relationships where it was like that's what you did. Like, and we both were young. I mean, I was 26 at the time. She was 23. I don't even really consider that being married because I mean I guess it is, but we just both were young and it
Yeah.
was just like whatever. And we divorced and we both didn't have anything, so like the divorce was not anything crazy. Like
Can't
it
take
was like
nothing,
give
huh?
me my money. It was like give me my money back from like the wedding. Give me this and she had a condo. I wasn't gonna go after any of that because it wasn't like that. We just grew apart,
Yeah.
and so and then that was in 2009, and then I moved back to my hometown, which I said I never would come back to because I wanted to get away from there because it was just a kind of it was a hole. And so I moved back, and then got a job at the same printing company that laid me off, just in the Charlotte office because they just opened that. So I worked there for like a year or two, got laid off from there, and then started looking for a job. And then I bounced around a couple of jobs. Now I got into this one place printing t-shirts, but it wasn't really a printing t-shirt place. They were actually printed on weights, like competition
Oh,
weights. They're
okay.
the name of that, like Rogue was one of the
Yeah.
companies we printed that, like Rogue that was on there. We printed that.
That's pretty cool.
They did print shirts, but like they had one like 12 head press automatic, but no one knew how to run it. And I went and played around with it and figured it out, but I still was like messing stuff up regularly. Like
Yeah.
out of 50 shirts, I mess up 20 of them,
Right.
and
Right. Yeah.
you ain't making money doing that.
No.
So then I bounced around a little bit, and that job just was a dead end job. And then I got myself into a screen printing shop, and I worked there for about 4.5 years. And I actually love screen printing. It's fun because you're
Yeah.
creating something. And that goes back, I know I skid a lot, but I drew a lot when I was little, creating things like that. So like that art aspect and creating was cool. It's just as a screen printer that you don't have any say in that company, you ain't making much money
Yeah,
unless you
that's
own
true.
that company.
Yep.
You're not working your way up,
There's nowhere to go.
So yeah,
There's
so
no
I
ladder
was,
to climb in a screen printing shop,
yeah,
unless
so
it's a
I kind of,
giant shop.
yeah, and this was not this. Now it had been around. She had been around for a while, but you could also see the decline in that shop too as it went. And then I kind of was like, man, this is not going anywhere. And I've always wanted to coach basketball, and I always wanted to kind of be a teacher and coach, but I didn't have the teaching part of my history degree because I didn't because there you could choose history or history of with your teacher's license.
Mm,
I chose history just to get out of there, which I wish I would have now because of what I'm going through now. But again, you can't go back and change things.
sure.
So I didn't do that part. So I was like, man, what I need to do, what I need to do. And then people were just getting these raises that I've been there before. I was putting all this work and like they were giving these people raises that it was people they can control. And that's why they were giving the
Mm,
raises to. I had more education than anybody in the entire building, even the owner. And I was like, hold up. Like, and I could tell that she was giving raises to people that had nowhere to go to. So like making them stay.
right.
So I was like,
That's
you know what?
interesting.
I was like, I'm out. Like, so I immediately got, it was crazy because I was a church not youth pastor, but youth leader at the time. And the youth pastor, his wife worked at the school that I work at now. And I just reached out one day at a youth program. I was like, hey, Crystal, um, if you got any openings at the school, I don't care what it is, if it's a kindergarten assistant, something like, just let me know because I want to at least get my foot in the door, and then that way I can
Yeah.
go from there. And literally, that was on a Sunday. That following Tuesday, she called me and was like, "Hey, there's a technology position open." And I knew the principal because I was remarried at this time, and the principal at that school actually was my stepdaughter's at that time third grade teacher. So I kind of knew her a little bit. And that's when I had the long hair, the bigger beard. So I looked like this big old hippie.
Right.
And I went in there and I sent her a message like, hey, because Crystal has mentioned to her that, hey, uh, Mr. Craig or William Craig's going to reach out. And she's like, oh, okay. So I reached out and I got an interview and I got the job. And that's where I've been for the past technically 7 years. I've been working at an elementary school as a technology teacher. I was in the process of getting my master's to get my license, but the way things working right now, like there's a lot of things that are happening now. Financially, I can't continue because
Yeah.
I don't even make them. I sold my house, so I had a large sum of money that was able to keep me going right now. But that money goes quick, in today's world. I spent more than half of it just on rent and bills.
Sure.
And I'm like, and so now that money's dwindling down, and like, I really can't, and I don't even make enough on my paycheck to pay my rent.
Right.
So now I'm in a situation because I was living good because I had money backing it up, but I was just basically had a big lump sum that I just watched get smaller in 4 years,
I
four
know
or
what you
5 years.
mean.
So now I'm like, oh gosh, and I can't really afford to continue to finish my master's because like I don't pay my bills. So like, and luckily I have my mom and my grandma that is always that's there to help me and stuff. But I don't want to rely on people. I
Yeah.
don't want to rely
Yeah.
on like that. So I mean, I know that they're willing to help, but that's why I'm in where I'm at right now. So that's kind of, and then and I started, I opened my sports car business back in was it June 2023,
Okay.
when I finally took a leap and said, you know what, I'm gonna try to open my card shop. But I knew it was gonna be all e-commerce right now. And honestly, you probably would understand and probably agree, being all e-commerce is not that bad of a deal if you're able to push product and stuff because
Yeah.
you don't have to pay for bills, light
Yeah.
bills, like so
Overhead
it's
on
kind of
retail real estate is expensive.
yeah. So like I've been doing that for the past since 2023, and that's kind of leading up to where I am now in my current situation of where I am, and I have a son that's 10 years old now, and it's not just me
Yeah.
moving forward. So that's kind of long, short story form of where I am now.
That's
So,
good.
but
Yeah, I kind of have a similar story about the selling of the house. It's funny how you speaking made me think of things. So the house I grew up in, my dad and my mom built back in 88, 89-ish. So I was born in 82. They built this house in like 88, 89. My mom was pregnant with my little sister while they were building it, and she was born in 88. So I guess it was, yeah. So anyway, you get the idea. When my dad passed and my stepmom moved back to Ohio, she was going to sell the house. And I was like, no, don't do that. I was, you don't sell the house. I was like, just rent the house to me for whatever the mortgage is, and essentially I'll just pay the mortgage, right?
yeah.
So I was sending her the money for the mortgage, but she wasn't paying it. And so the bank foreclosed. And my granddad bought the house at the mortgage auction. So we got to keep it. And he paid, I want to say he paid like $80,000 or something, $89,000 or something for it. I mean, it was nothing essentially compared to what it was worth, you know? So I got to keep the house. So, but over time, me being dumb, young, having a bunch of party house and roommates and all that nonsense, it just started getting destroyed, right? And so eventually I sold it. And when I sold it, I bought a little condo in Destin, Florida, which is actually where I go to church, is in Destin. It's about 45 minutes from where I am, where I live now, and where I grew up. But I bought a little condo there, stayed there for a little while, and then I sold the condo and moved down to Orlando. And kind of the same idea. I was like, well, I have this money in the bank, so like I'll have time to find a good job or whatever, you know? And that money went super fast.
Yeah, I mean, of
It was
course, I
like,
went from
whoa.
I mean, I went from never having money to having a
Right.
lot of money
Right.
one time. I knew that I had to pay rent and bills and stuff like that. So of course, I did. I've never traveled, so I took a trip to Colorado with a friend. I mean, I definitely indulged on some things and bought
Sure.
some nicer things for myself. But I knew, like, I did the math, like, literally more than half of it was on bills, rent, and stuff like that.
Yep.
So I probably didn't even get, but really maybe, I don't know, a little less than half of it that actually was for me. And that's
Yeah.
just living and buying groceries and things like that. So, like, yeah, I got some Jordans out of it, but,
Well, that was
but
what was funny about when I moved to Orlando. When I moved down there, I had uh I had like booked this like cheapo, like you could pay by the week essentially, you know? And
mhm,
it was like $250 a week or something to live in this little, studio motel room essentially, right? But it had a fridge and a stove and, a bed and a bathroom. And a few months in, I finally like signed a lease on an apartment. And looking back, dude, I should have just stayed in the $250 a week. Like that's $1,000 a month, as
yeah,
opposed to an apartment, which is the exact same amenities. It's the same stuff, but it was like $1,800 a month or whatever, And I was like, why did I do that? But like, you wanted to have the apartment and it had a garage so I could park my car and, all that
yeah,
kind of nonsense. It wasn't in and this little like hotel thing, it wasn't in like a bad neighborhood, but it was like literally like the least affordable place. You know what I mean? So it had
yeah,
those types of people lived there, people that couldn't afford anything else. And at the time I wasn't one of those people. So I didn't want to live there. And I was like, dude, if I could have just humbled myself and just stayed there, like
yeah.
it
And
would have been
I
way
think,
better.
but yeah, for me, I say, because like right when I sold the house, my mortgage actually went under $1,000,
Oh wow.
and now I'm paying like right at 1,800.
For an apartment?
So yeah, for
Yeah.
a two bedroom, I had a four-bedroom house with a garage and all
Right.
that stuff. So,
Right, right.
but if I would have stayed there, I would have still been living like literally paycheck.
Sure.
I'd have been, what do they call it, house broke? So I
Yeah.
think that's what
Sure.
they call it.
Sure.
Basically, everything I paid would be going to the house, and I was still not been able to really do much and have fun. And for me,
Sure.
not have fun, but for
I
me,
know
I
what you
was
mean.
like, I'm tired of like telling my son no on like small things. Like,
Sure.
so like selling it helped me out, and it like did. But now again, with the way society
Yeah.
is and the way things are, it's like when that money goes quick.
It
No
goes
matter
so
how much you
fast.
think you have it, it goes quick.
It
Just
does.
on basic necessities. So like,
Yeah.
you know,
You got to eat.
and I've never really been too good with money anyway. So
Me
like,
either.
so like, again, I don't regret anything
Yeah.
because like honestly, I probably wouldn't be where I am today if
Yeah.
that didn't happen.
Yeah.
So
So I had this vision in my head when I sold the house that I would one day be able to afford to buy it back. Right. And
yeah,
it had gotten to the point where it really needed a lot of work. So I was like my long term plan was to sell the house to somebody who was going to remodel it because they were going to have to anyway. Right. There was no way anybody was just going to move in there and start living. So sell it to somebody. They're going to fix it up and either flip it or whatever, or live in it. And then eventually down the road, I can just figure out a way to buy it back. And I'll just let them do the work essentially, right? And come up with that upfront money, and then I'll figure it out later. But the market around here has gotten so out of control that I don't know if that'll ever happen. I mean, that house is
um,
probably appraises at 600,000 now, maybe even more.
oh yeah,
It's like
like
it's insane.
all the houses in my little town, because my town's small, and they like literally there's no more property to even buy around here,
Yep.
and they're just putting houses up. Like everything's at least 350 up
Right.
around here. Like, and I mean, I can't afford to even get any of that.
Yep.
So
Yep.
like, I mean, I'm just kind of in a situation. But hey, like I've always said, things are gonna work out like they're supposed
Yeah.
to. So
Exactly.
I don't
Yep.
stress about
I
it.
got a decent deal now. Um, where I live. I live with a couple people, and one of the guys owns the house, and he just rents us rooms. Rents the other two rooms out. So I just live in one of the bedrooms, and I mean I can use the rest of the house, obviously, but we have a pool. It's in a nice, quiet neighborhood. No HOA, so we can have our toys outside and all that
The
kind of fun stuff.
HOA is a joke.
It's such a scam, bro. It's so annoying. You mentioned not being good with money, and I wanted to point out when my granddad passed away, my mom's dad, the rich side of the family, right? Um, he had quite a bit of money, quite a bit of property, and different stuff like that. Him and his cousin developed a bunch of subdivisions and stuff in our area, and like they donated a bunch of land to one of the state parks and stuff. You know what I mean? Like they were like did okay. I mentioned to you the other day that like we have a school named after our family and different stuff like that, right? Like so our families, they were pretty well known and well to do and all that nonsense. I've never been that, but But anyway, when he passed, um he left all that stuff to us, right? Obviously. But the way that he set it up, because he knows that we were my mom and me and my little sister, he knew that we were all pretty bad with money. Um the way that he set it all up was everything that he owned had to be sold. Like nothing was left to anyone in the will. There were some things that we kept and didn't sell just because we made the agreement to do that. But like my sister got his van that he had, so she kept that as her car or whatever. She actually just got rid of that thing, and he died in like 2013, I think, something like that. So it's been a long time.
So she got a use out of it.
Oh yeah, she definitely got her use out of that free van that she got. Um, but he basically set it up so that everything had to be sold, and then instead of us getting cash, we get like a lump sum of cash.
Mm-hmm.
We get a check every month. So
Okay.
so he was like, I'm not giving them, like, you know what I mean? He was just super smart. He was like, I'm not giving them cash because they'll just spend it. You know what I mean? He knew, and so I'm both thankful and mad about,
Well, see,
about
I
that.
think, see, my grandfather passed away a few years ago, and like, he always was like, inherit. He told me I had an inheritance, but then when he passed away, I never got one.
Hmm.
I never asked. I never asked for it either because like I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
But I think the way that it got set up is when he passed, everything went to my grandma. And now she's in control of everything. and she could give it to me.
Sure.
But my grandma she's a tax person. She worked for HR Block for her whole life, so
Yeah.
she
My
knows how
granddad
I
was a
am with
CPA
money.
too.
Yeah, she knows how I am with money. So like she has it set up where now if she passes away, it goes to my mom.
Right.
And then when that happens, everything will go to me. But the way me and my mom have it is like when something happens to my grandma, my mom's going to give me
Right. Give you your part
the
now.
half
Yeah.
and give it to me. And then like if something happens to my mom, she'll whatever she has will
Yeah.
filter over.
But that's
So,
also how your grandma, is this the same grandma that helps you out with things sometimes?
Yeah.
Like, see, so that's actually how she's allowed to do that, right? Is because
Yeah.
she has that cushion, right? And so you are
Yeah.
getting that inheritance in some ways, just not in a
Because
one check.
I never asked for it, but I mentioned it, and then she was like, "Well, there's no inheritance," and I'm like, "Hold on, like,
Yeah, there is. You
like
stop that.
Papa told me there were, and by you telling me that there's none, saying that he's a liar."
Right, or you spent it
but
all, one or the other.
but it ain't like that.
Yeah, it's
So,
not a big deal either way. Yeah, I agree. Um, there was something else you said that made me want to mention something. I don't remember what it was now. But anyway, since we forgot that, is that a good place to end episode 1? Should we just cut it off right there?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
let's
we
do
can
it.
kind of end that, and then
We'll start.
we can just
We'll
kind
do
of
another
jump right
episode.
into. We can jump right into, I guess, episode 2, and